It all started long, long ago. Actually, before we ever met one another. Sean, my husband, the captain of this here boat, has always said he would travel the world. The seed was planted when he would watch the Travel Channel on TV in his youngster years, long before the internet was even a thing, and dream of his own travels. For me, Amber, I don't exactly know when the seed was planted, but before my husband and I ever even met, I would say things like, if I won the lottery, I would travel the world. Little did I know you could travel the world without ever winning the lottery. You simply needed an ultra-strong sailboat, right? Fast forward to March 1st of this year, 2023, when we began our circumnavigation. Knowing that we've sailed to 5 countries between then and July feels like such an accomplishment.
Here we are in Isla Mujeres, Mexico. We made it, the first wave of our circumnavigation outside of the U.S.
We arrived here in the Bahamas late yesterday afternoon.
We have reached a milestone here on Tela Ru. We have finished the first leg of our journey across the Atlantic and are now entering the island of Bermuda.
All right, it is a beautiful day out here in the North Atlantic, and we are off the coast of stunning São Miguel Island in the Azores.
And now we are arriving into Portugal mainland.
But the real achievement is that over the course of several sailing legs, we sailed from one continent to another, North America to Europe, just the two of us. And our dog Delilah girl, but she didn't do any of the work, so we'll dedicate a video to her and what it's like to sail the world full-time with a dog sometime in the future. Could you imagine traveling with your significant other on a 44-foot long, 13-foot wide sailboat for 32 days? 20 of those days being consecutive days at sea, meaning that even if you wanted to just motor the entire way, forgetting about the work involved in sailing and tacking, there's no way you'd ever have enough fuel to make it. With no one else aboard, no internet, no news channel to flick on as you sip your hot morning coffee, no land in sight, no restaurant or fast food to run to when you're not feeling like cooking. In fact, in most cases, after many days without seeing anything but the rippling waves surrounding you in every direction, the sun, the moon, the stars, the only signs of life whatsoever, besides your dog and significant other, would be some periodically spunky dolphins, usually right when you need that pick-me-up. Some Portuguese man-o-war, the occasional flying fish, seabirds, and a handful of cargo ships in the very far distance, miles away. Could you do so knowing you may be on the verge of being overpowered by strong winds more than once? Could you do so knowing you would be in winds at times powerful enough to knock your boat down if you didn't have the right boat or your sails weren't configured properly? Are you confident enough in yourself and your significant other to be fully self-reliant? Do you trust your significant other enough to literally put your life in their hands? And I don't mean just saying you trust that person with your life, but really believing and placing your life in their hands. Because really, this is our story of true blue, off-grid, trial and error, variable seas, variable weather conditions, lack of comfort at times, a lot of lack of sleep, problem solving,
Not going to be easy.
self-reliance, and to put it straightforward to you, survival through whatever Mother Nature threw our way. This is our story of what really happened out at sea for 32 days between the continents of North America and where we've just arrived in Europe as a husband and wife team of only 2 out on the roaring sea. I'll make this part quick, but for context, on March 1st, 2023, we sailed from our home port in Coconut Grove, Florida to Key West, Florida. Key West to Mexico, Mexico to the Bahamas. And this is where the Atlantic crossing began. We sailed from the Bahamas to Bermuda, which took us 7 days and nights. We stayed and recouped for a few weeks in Bermuda. There's an extra layer for us because we have this sailing channel that we post 2 YouTube videos on every single week, Friday and Sunday. We knew that for the next leg of our crossing, we could be at sea for up to 3 weeks, weather moon dependent. So we needed to create and edit 3 weeks of videos to go live while we were at sea. That's 6 videos. The whole reason we stayed in Bermuda for a few weeks. Our word is our bond, and we said we'd post 2 videos a week on YouTube. Consistency and reliability is a big thing to us. Not only that, our circumnavigating the globe aboard our sailboat Tela Ru is not only about sailing around the world, it's also about immersing ourselves to the extent we can into the culture and lifestyle of the destinations we sail to. Spending time in each place we visit eating local food.
Like pouring people bacon. Very interesting.
Seeing the sights, discovering what makes the people tick, the way they speak, and what they're known for is our goal in each country. Our next sail as part of our transatlantic sailing passage from Bermuda to San Miguel in the Azores took us 19 days to sail, our longest stint ever at sea. But due to no slips in the marina, the first day we arrived to San Miguel and no anchoring, we had to head back out to sea and drift for another night and day, making this stint 20 days without stepping foot on solid, non-moving ground.
Didn't see this working out like this, but we're gonna have one more night out at sea.
Once on land in San Miguel, we rested, worked on editing YouTube videos, and explored San Miguel for 13 days before our final leg of sailing across the North Atlantic Ocean for 6 days and nights that would complete our transatlantic passage just west of Lisbon, Portugal and Cascais, Portugal. Now that you've got the big picture, let's get back to the main story of this video. What really happened during our 32 days of sailing across the Atlantic. We're circumnavigating the globe one wave at a time via our magic carpet, our sailboat Tela Ru. In the unprotected waters of the wild North Atlantic Ocean, anything can and did happen. One moment we may have been adjusting our sails during a beautiful sunrise before our morning coffee, and another would find ourselves in the middle of a serious storm squall. Or we may have been sitting in the cockpit during our night watch, bundled up in our foul weather gear, beating into the waves with rain blowing into the cockpit, resulting in a damp feeling down to our bones, with raisins for fingers, just waiting for the sun to begin to peek up above the horizon, ready to be dry again. We may have experienced a stunning sunset one moment, and within a few hours we found ourselves in the middle of the night with a problem on our hands that cannot wait until morning to dive into fixing. The thing about sailing with a crew of only 2, 1 man, 1 woman, is to go into the whole adventure knowing that perhaps the most vital aspect is to be self-reliant. Something my husband Sean seemed fully prepared for. Me, on the other hand, well, this is something I learned during the journey. What really happened at sea during 32 days of sailing was a fair share of problem solving. For example, as things seem to regularly occur during the middle of the night at sea that you never expect or see coming, like that dreadful night at sea when our toilet system wouldn't flush at all, resulting in Sean's adapt and overcome problem solving skills to kick in, and with self-reliance being the key during a pitch black night at sea, I'm so thankful that while Sean, through grit and determination, took our toilet system completely apart, all the way out to the through hole to fix this problem in order for us to once again have a perfectly functioning head, I was simply tasked with holding the flashlight. Not only were problem-solving skills key in times of situations, we also had to tap into the self-reliance tank, and when our Genoa furler became fouled and wouldn't furl, of course at 1 a.m. and of course with our full Genoa out in an increasingly rough sea state when it was time for shift change, we also get to deal with seasickness. And by we, I do not mean Sean. I mean me. When beginning this adventure, I wondered if I'd eventually get used to a rough sea and puking my guts out on passage would one day stop as my body adjusted. Turns out the short answer to that is no. This isn't something we usually show during our passage videos, but the truth is there hasn't been a single passage where I haven't thrown up at least once. Attempting to prevent seasickness is always the goal. During our Atlantic crossing, I wore a patch behind my ear, the scopolamine patch, for 3 days at a time, when I could last that long. But sometimes the side effects I would get from the patch were worse than the seasickness itself, so I'd take it off prior to the 3 days. As you may have seen in some of our passage videos, I'd eat pickles. Eating a pickle could help with nausea or feeling a little unwell at sea, which would usually help for a moment. Sometimes the seasickness was so bad I would run, hoping to make it to throw up in the toilet or overboard. Other times I was able to hold back long enough to help Sean adjust the sails, then go throw up. I felt guilty for being seasick at times, but Sean, being the valiant hero he is, he would give me a Dramamine, I would pass out for 7 or 8 hours, and he would take on a very long night watch while I got horizontal and slept it off. I'm so happy that over the entire 32-day Atlantic crossing, this drastic measure was only needed a few times. The good thing is that usually after 3 to 4 days at sea, I would stop getting seasick. Although, during our longest stint at sea, which turned into 20 days, I had bouts of seasickness off and on throughout. Don't let this scare you though. The things we've experienced and seen have made every single moment of seasickness totally worth it. Speaking of sleeping it off though, let's talk night watches and when we actually get to sleep. Over the course of 32 days at sea, when it wasn't necessary for Sean to come to the rescue and let me sleep off the seasickness, we settled into a routine that really worked for us. After dinner in the evenings, Sean would usually go below and get some sleep while I took the first night watch, and then we'd switch.
Good morning, baby doll. Shift change.
I'd sleep, and he'd take over night watch. We found that watches of 4 hours at a time were about our limit of being able to stay focused and alert in the night, and sleeping anything less than 4 hours at a time made for a difficult night watch when it was your turn next. The usual routine was dinner around 6-ish, then usually dessert, clean dishes, take showers, and the first person to bed would typically go around anywhere from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. depending on the day, and would get up 4 hours later to relieve the other from their night watch. Stay up 4 hours, switch, etc., etc. It worked for us. A friend and sailing mentor of ours, John Crutchmer, recently mentioned to us over coffee and some pastéis de natas aboard Tela Ru in San Miguel that a husband and wife crew of 2 sailing is a lot like single-handed sailing. You spend a great deal of time alone, and that at times you only see each other in passing on the way to take your sleep shift. If I'm being honest, I can totally relate to his statements. Though this 32 days at sea brought Sean and I closer than I knew possible, building an incredible connection as we survived the big blue rolling ocean together, fully relying on one another to make it to the other side, I actually missed my Sean at times while at sea. Even though we were only ever as far from one another as him being on one end of the boat sleeping and me being on the other at watch, and vice versa. When on the anchor or in a marina, we actually get to sleep next to each other, spend more time together doing things or relaxing. When at sea for this big passage, when we weren't on watch, we were sleeping in preparation for our next watch, or cooking, or fixing a problem, or adjusting sails, etc. What about food? As mentioned, if we didn't feel like cooking, we couldn't just grab takeout or go to our local dinner spot for an easy night. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Every day for 32 days, we prepared it. We mainly snacked for breakfast and lunch, ate a lot of fruit, some smoothies, tuna salad, pickles, cheeses, but our main hearty meal was dinner. In hopes of making things easier for us, I did cook meals ahead of time and place in our tiny freezer for each passage so that we could just reheat it in our oven. We found that this was super helpful, especially on our longest passage. But since our freezer and refrigerator is extremely small, we would eventually be surviving off of, you guessed it, canned soups, dry goods, and even some Spam, y'all. Cooking was sometimes a total breeze, and sometimes it was more of an adventure, aka during rough seas. Like the time an entire pot of scrumptious food I was about to begin cooking flew into the floor the moment I turned my back for a second during a rough sea. Cleaning it up was not the most fun evening at sea, and Sean, being the hero I see him as, took over once the massive spill was cleaned and cooked an entire meal from scratch, gracefully at that, as I cooled my not so graceful fuse in the cockpit on this particular occasion. You see, living life at sea is living moment by moment. Things happen at sea, just like on land, that could provoke all sorts of emotion. But at sea, there's no going to walk it off around the neighborhood. No drive to take to change the scenery when feeling overwhelmed. Just a loving husband to tell me to go up top, breathe in the salty air, look at the horizon, and change the channel in my mind. God, I'm so thankful for that man. What about storms at sea? Are they completely avoidable? The answer to that is no. Absolutely not. No way, Jose. We ran into many squalls at sea, some storms that lasted for a few hours at a time, others that quickly blew over. We experienced winds from 2 knots where we couldn't even sail to 48 knots, where we pulled in our Genoa, put out our storm sail, and just rode it out on our strong Nayod. We have the ability to download the weather each day while at sea, but what we've learned is that 1, weather is constantly changing from what the forecast is said to be and what it actually is in real life. 2, if we sat around constantly waiting on what the weather was forecasted to be doing on a weather grid file, we'd never cast the lines and just sail, always waiting for the perfect weather window. Does that even exist? And 3, the most accurate weather can usually be seen with our own 2 eyes. We'd be crazy to never look at a weather forecast at all and just sail off smack dab in the middle of a massive storm if it was avoidable. So, while we absolutely rely on the weather forecast for the big picture before heading out to sea, we fully understand no forecast can truly predict Mother Nature. So we will always prepare ourselves and our boat for whatever Mother Nature may throw our way. But what about things to do at sea? Do you think you'd get stir crazy during 32 days of sailing across the North Atlantic Ocean? You can't just go for a run, a bike ride, to the gym, cocktail hour, one of my favorites, shopping, to meet up with a girlfriend for lunch. At sea, we found ourselves sitting and taking in the majestic water views in every direction. Sometimes the roaring sea would be magnificent to watch and get lost in the massive waves. At other times, the calm would seem unreal to sit and stare into, wondering what could be just below the surface. We learned during the crossing from North America to Europe to slow down, that almost everything had to be done in slow motion. Sometimes we'd take on much needed chores and they'd help us pass the time by. We got in a lot of reading. Over the course of 32 days at sea, I read 5 romance novels, studied up on some sailing knowledge books, and I read multiple books by the world-renowned sailor John Kretschmer. Sean got lost in his Hemingway books like A Farewell to Arms, True at First Light, and The Garden of Eden. He also read The Long Way and Island of the Lost. I got in some exercise at times to pass a block of time by. We sipped a cocktail or glass of wine and talked about our day at sea. Not every day, but plenty of them, I did a lot of journaling about the experience and how I felt I was personally growing and learning. Speaking of, there was a lot to learn. Things like how to set up the wing-on-wing configuration using our whisker pole for the first time together, reefing the sails when you feel the first gut instinct to do so, before you're on the verge of being overpowered, patience when the seas are so calm and leaving you bobbing around like a cork. And when a problem arises, even in the pitch black darkness, you can't just wait until the sun rises to solve it. You sometimes have to spend some time in the darkness at sea, working for hours, without allowing a grip of fear to hold you back. Just solid focus, just determination, making it happen. Something more came of our 32 days at sea that was a bit unexpected. Remember how at the beginning of this video, I asked you if you could imagine traveling with your significant other on a 44-foot long, 13-foot wide sailboat for 32 days? After doing so as a husband and wife team of 2, though at times we only saw each other in passing between trying to get enough sleep to be alert and focus on our next shift, we also had to rely on one another. We also had to work together. We had to figure things out together. Sometimes we had to take things over for the other person, like when Sean took the cooking over for me after an entire pot of food spilled and went to waste. We also had to grow together, learning to listen to our gut about reefing the sails, learning that it wasn't selfish to rely on my husband when I needed to get better from my seasickness. He actually needed me better so I could be a better part of the team. Blaring some old Hank Jr. music loud at sea at times.
Hank, by God, Williams Jr.
Singing along, laughing, drinking wine together, having charcuterie, romanticizing the experience, taking in the beauty that can only be experienced together at sea, never to be replicated exactly the same again, breathing in the sunrises and sunsets. surviving together, learning together, and just being together. These 32 days at sea grew a bond between us that will never be broken, that will only go with us and grow stronger as we continue. And that, our sailing friends, is the story of what really happened for 32 days at sea as we sailed from North America to Europe, just the two of us, one wave at a time.
So cheers, babe. Cheers to you, to me, and to Tela Ru, sailing around the world, one wave at a time.
Cheers.
Cheers, baby. We post brand new videos twice a week, so y'all be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe.